I'm Ellis Martin. Join me for a conversation with Jordan Trimble, President, and Jonathan Wiesblatt, the new CEO of Rockridge Resources, trading as ROCK on the TSX Venture Exchange and RRRLF in the U.S. Rockridge Resources is a publicly traded mineral exploration company focused on the acquisition, exploration, and development of mineral resource properties in Canada, specifically copper and battery metal projects. The company's flagship is the Knife Lake project, located in Saskatchewan, which is ranked as one of the best mining jurisdictions in the world. Meet the new CEO and catch up with the latest news on Rockridge Resources. Jordan, John, welcome to the program. Nice to have you both with us today.
Thanks for having us, Ellis.
Jordan, we have a very significant announcement with the addition of Jonathan Wiesblatt to the company as Chief Executive Officer. Let's talk about Jonathan first off and why the decision to make a change.
Sure. We needed to beef up the senior management with some more capital markets experience, in particular on investing in the resource sector, knowing what makes these companies successful, having a network that we can tap into going forward. And John, he'll talk about his past, but he's been in the asset management industry, in particular in the resource investment industry for a number of years, previously at Sprott and then at a family office up until recently. And I've gotten to know John over the last year, and we built a great working relationship. He complements the strong technical expertise that we already have at the board and at the technical advisory board level. We have some great geologists and technical people working with us. Grant Ewing, who was previously the CEO, will continue on as a consulting geologist. And we have our geosciences contractor, Terralogic, that's handling all the exploration and work at our Knife Lake copper project. So John brings a skill set that we felt we needed. And without further ado, John, why don't you give the audience a quick background on your last couple of decades working in Toronto?
Sure, Ellis. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join the call today. I've been hanging around Bay Street for the last 2 decades. Most of that time I've spent as an institutional portfolio manager. I spent 10 years working on a very successful multi-strategy hedge funds in the earlier part of the 2000s. A big part of our mandate was to invest capital across the spectrum of resources, just given where we were in the past cycle. So my knowledge and abilities to invest in the resource space, predominantly in the Canadian market, is pretty strong. From there, I was recruited and hired to run Sprott Asset Management's flagship Canadian equity fund. And I did that for about 4 years. And while at Sprott, I had the pleasure of being exposed to probably the best resource investors in this country from all corners of the spectrum. So that was a great learning experience, had access to a bunch of great minds over there and learned a lot. And when I was done working at Sprott for 4+ years, I was recruited to go and run some capital at one of the largest family offices in Canada, where I did so for the past couple of years. Probably about 12 months ago, just as my investment thesis and my views on the global macro were starting to transition, we were entering a period of great uncertainty with the rising pandemic issues we were experiencing. I was forced to take the view that there was going to be a bunch of stimulus coming into the markets, and how would I position my portfolios and the portfolios of my clients? And one of the answers that I came to was looking at hard assets again, which I hadn't done for the previous 4 years in a great way, and started to maneuver the portfolios into precious metals, base metals, and some other hard assets. And it seemed to be the right call. Gold at the time was much lower than it was today, as was silver and some of the other precious metals. I met Jordan, who's the president of Rockridge, about 12 months ago. And Jordan and I started to build a good working relationship. We were introduced to one another through a mutual contact. And it started to become clear that my thesis about the macro environment was turning out to be an accurate one. And Jordan was educating me on the very exciting projects within Rockridge. And the more I learned about the company, the more it fit into my overall view of the macro environment. And we continued to discuss the opportunities that might exist. And it's ultimately resulted in me joining up as the CEO. I'm very excited to join the company. There's 2 incredibly exciting assets within Rockridge. Flagship property, Knife Lake, is something that I'm really looking forward to digging my heels 2002.
Thank you, John, and welcome to the company. So let's take a look at that macro thesis for just a couple of minutes, if you don't mind. You've got gold, you've got copper. Usually these are converse parts of the sector that can't exist at the same time. So in your opinion, they can exist at the same time, and that time is now, I assume, due to all the stimulus happening in North America, in the U.S. especially, and due to the fact that we are becoming more electric than ever. Does that fit your thesis?
Absolutely. So if you go back about a decade ago, I took the view on electric vehicles would start to take market share amongst the global auto fleet. And I was a bit early then. My portfolios had made some investments in the lithium space and some electric vehicle metals at the time. That turned out to be quite early, but my knowledge was quite strong and sophisticated at the time. If you fast forward 10 years, the demand environment for electric vehicle metals such as copper, lithium, etc., cobalt, now seems to be the time where demand is starting to play. If you look specifically at the copper sector, there's been a lack of capital investment for the last 5 or 6 years, a significant one. And as we come through the tail end of this pandemic and demand starts to return, you're going to see a real supply gap and a price response. So really excited about the copper markets. Gold is a completely different animal altogether. I've become more bearish on the US dollar with the rising growth and stimulus. As the US dollar rolls, you'll start to see the natural hedge and the flow of capital move into the precious metal sector. So there is a congruence here within Rockridge that makes a lot of sense to me. And that congruence is the intersection between gold and copper. I favor both the metals, and like I said, the two assets within Rockridge make it an extremely exciting company.
There's many new companies and old companies that could use great talent such as yourself. You've selected this one to work with, and I'm curious as to the why, aside from the fact that you've got a great relationship with Jordan.
That's a great question. So every great investment starts with a great management team and a great board of directors. You can have an A quality asset and a C quality management team and board, and the end result is a C quality investment every single time. So what we have at Rockridge is not only two high quality assets, but a board that's been put together by Jordan and his team, and a management group that's both technically sophisticated and sophisticated in capital markets. You combine those two together, and like I said, my experience has always led me to a very successful outcome.
Let's talk about the recent news at Knife Lake with the copper project and the plans for the drill program going forth. It's fairly significant.
We spoke about this, Ellis. It's been a little while since the last interview where we focused in on Knife Lake and the plans there. As you recall, we acquired this project from a prospect generator, Eagle Plains, large shareholder of Rockridge, back in early 2019, a completely different copper market than what we're in right now. I think it was trading around $2.70 or $2.80. We're now north of $4. So it's completely changed the outlook for the project, the existing resource that is there, the financeability of the project, something that I truly believe creates an incredible value proposition currently, with the company trading around a 7.5 million Canadian market cap. But just to refresh the listeners on the project itself, it's a VMS predominantly copper project in Saskatchewan, just northwest of Flin Flon. Flin Flon Mining Camp is one of the most prolific VMS jurisdictions in the world. It's a project that had a fair bit of exploration done between 1970 and 2000. They delineated a small, shallow resource, again, mostly copper, but polymetallic, some precious metal content in there, as well as some cobalt. A lot of the historical exploration was just focused at the deposit area, which is exciting because not a lot of work was done regionally, certainly no modern exploration. And that's really what we're looking to do, is to go into projects in Canada in good jurisdictions that were simply overlooked for a number of recent years for whatever reason, and apply some modern techniques and exploration methodologies to hopefully yield additional discoveries. We went in 2019 when we initially acquired the option for the project, and we did some infill drilling to update a resource estimate, but we didn't do much regional work. And just recently, with the completed geophysics, which we announced last week, and some field work that we did in late 2019, we identified and refined a handful of regional targets. And we believe there's going to be more discoveries made on this project. Very rarely do you have a one-off VMS deposit. Typically, they occur in clusters. Any VMS system, you typically find multiple deposits. It's a remobilized VMS deposit as well, so it's come from a primary source. It's yet to be discovered. We're hoping that we can go out and we can find that. So the plan, as per the news last week, there'll be updates on this over the coming weeks, is to go in and drill test several different target areas in and around the deposit and regionally. We have a minimum of 1,600 meters planned. Could look to expand that if need be, but that should give us a good shot at hopefully honing in on one of these, what we believe to be several other deposits that have yet to be discovered proximal to the main deposit area.
With the addition of John to the board here as CEO of the company, how does that change your calculus going forward for the next year?
Again, like I said, I think it adds a new element to the board. As John pointed out, is you need a good mix of both technical, geological experience and expertise, which we have covered, but you also need management and capital markets experience. And John brings a couple of decades of that to the company. So I think it'll help out very much with the progress that we're making corporately, being able to raise capital, bringing new eyeballs to the story. John's based in Toronto. Our corporate head office is here in Vancouver, so gives us some representation out east, and I think it'll go a long way to continuing to build the company up.
In full disclosure, I'm a shareholder of this company and also another company that you're the CEO and president of, Sky Harbor Resources, a uranium-based company. You understand the energy market, Jordan, very well.
Look, I'm needless to say a huge bull on any metal that is required for the electrification that we're seeing happening globally. So copper really is the common denominator in all of this, in this massive push for electrification and for going carbon neutral. It truly is the ultimate green metal, if you will. And you just look at talking about electric vehicles versus internal combustion engines, you require 3.5 to 4 times as much copper in an EV than you do in a traditional internal combustion engine. So as we see these macro trends continue to unfold and play out, copper is going to become ever more paramount to that rollout. Having a copper project in a good jurisdiction, in a safe jurisdiction, Saskatchewan consistently ranked in the top 5 mining jurisdictions globally by the Fraser Institute, is a huge bonus as well. And so we're excited. We think the timing is great here, especially with the copper market moving as it has recently. We think there's still a lot of upside from the current prices, and we're out there looking to make the next major discovery in Canada and in Saskatchewan.
And you're trading at about 14 cents Canadian a share. That's around 10 or 11 US. Great potential upside. What is the share structure like?
Sure. So we just closed a financing about 2.5 million Canadian. So we're fully funded for all the upcoming exploration and drill plans we have at Knife Lake. There's now about 73 million shares issued and outstanding in the company. So it's, like I said, it's still very compelling in terms of the value proposition at about $7.5 to $8 million enterprise value. I think there is a pretty good case to be had that with success with this drill program, especially if it yields a new discovery, that you'll see a re-rating on the stock.
If I can interject as well, if you look at the Canadian copper junior peer group, they're trading at around 10 cents per pound of total resource on a copper equivalent basis. Rockridge trades at 2 cents. If you look at some of the closest comparables in the Saskatchewan and Manitoba markets, they're trading above 10 cents per pound. There is significant opportunity for a valuation re-rating here. And one of the very reasons that I'm super excited to be joining the company at this time. It's one thing to help be an allocator of capital to these companies, but it's another thing to be on the inside of these businesses and to help them grow organically and externally from the inside out. So super excited, lots of valuation upside, and think this is a great opportunity for new shareholders to come in and make great returns for their portfolios.
Jordan Trimble, Jonathan Wiesblatt, thank you so much for joining me today on the program. I'm very excited about this news, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I've been speaking with Jordan Trimble, President, and Jonathan Wiesblatt, CEO of Rockridge Resources, trading as ROCK on the TSX Venture Exchange and RRRLF in the United States. I'm Ellis Martin.
Subscribe to the Ellis Martin newsletter. It's free. Go to ellismartinreport.com and fill out the quick and easy pop-up form.